Robert Clark Seger, born May 6, 1945. To the world, he was a musician. But to those who had heard him sing, who once got lost in his melodies, Bob Seger was more than that. He was a silent soul, a storyteller who didn't need the spotlight, a refuge for hearts that had nowhere else to go. Bob was born and raised in Detroit, the city of steel, the city of smoke, the city of roaring engines and tireless hearts. Amid dusty sunlit streets and the dreams of factory workers, Seger learned to love life through the smallest of things. A soul song playing on an old radio, a handshake from his father after the night shift, a quiet gaze from his mother as she listened to him strum his first few notes. It was there, among train whistles and the echoes of labor, that a musical soul was planted, unadorned, unpretentious, just real. He started from nothing. No record label backing, no media promotion, nothing but a raspy voice and a heart quietly burning. Yet that nothing was exactly what made him irreplaceable. In an age of glittering stars, Seger stepped forward quietly, no theatrics, no gimmicks, just music and truth. The truth of people, of memories, of the things we've lost without even realizing. When Night Moves first played in 1976, no one expected it to become a chapter in the memories of millions of Americans. Not because it was a hit, but because it was a mirror reflecting back lost youth, faded love, and unspoken truths. Every Seger song was like that. Against the Wind, Turn the Page, Roll Me Away. Slices of time, fragments of emotion he collected and pieced together with music to remind us. Living is a way of remembering. And remembering, sometimes, is the only way to live on. Seger never sought attention. He refused the glamour of Hollywood, rejected luxurious mansions. He chose a simple life, living with the wife he loved for decades, raising their children, still finding time each day to sit at the piano, write a few notes, or simply be still. For Seger, silence had its own sound, the sound of reflection, of empathy, of an inner world no one could see except through music. No one imagined that Bob Seger, the man whose voice carried through some of America's darkest years, would fall to something unseen, untouchable, shapeless, peripheral nerve cancer, a rare, silent, and terrifyingly cruel disease. It didn't arrive like thunder. It came like a slow, cold wind, gentle, nearly invisible, yet silently destroying every nerve controlling movement, sensation, even memory. It began with a light tingling in his fingertips. He thought it was just age, the toll of decades holding guitars and microphones. But then his fingers stiffened, his handwriting warped, and each step felt like his legs no longer belonged to him. When doctors gave the diagnosis, he stayed silent. No why, no pleading for more time, just a nod. Because Bob Seger, all his life, had lived as though every moment might be the last. To him, life was never something to bargain for. It was a song once begun, it must be played to its final note. You can choose treatment, the doctor said, but it will be painful, and the chances of recovery are very low. Seger smiled, a smile his wife would later describe as the smile of a man who knew he was fading, but wasn't afraid. He refused chemotherapy, refused to live in a hospital. He didn't want his final days filled with the beeping of machines and the stench of chemicals. I've lived nearly 70 years in music, he told his son. Don't let the last sound I hear be a medical alarm. So Bob Seger chose to go home. The old house in suburban Michigan, where he had lived for decades, where his first songs were written on a kitchen table, where he taught his son to play guitar, where he once told his wife on a winter night, "No matter how far I go, this will always be home." Now that place became a hospital, a chapel, a sacred final resting ground. The pain grew sharper. Unlike typical cancers, peripheral nerve cancer causes the body to slowly retreat from the world. First losing sensation, then movement, and finally language. Some mornings, he'd wake up unable to feel his palms. Some afternoons, he couldn't control his steps. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was when he could no longer hold his guitar. Couldn't play even a single line of Turn the Page to comfort himself. It's ironic, he wrote with trembling hands. I've spent my life speaking for others. Now, when I need to speak, I can't. His wife cared for him every moment. She spoon-fed each meal. When he wanted to sit on the porch to watch the sun, she held him gently, the same hands that had clung to his for half a century. On some nights, she'd hear him whimper softly in his sleep, not from pain, but because he dreamed of standing on stage, alone. No applause, no audience, just singing, endlessly, a lyricless tune like a lost child. Though silent, Seger still wrote. Not with words, but with symbols, with his eyes, with the presence of a soul that never surrendered. He left behind hundreds of tiny notes, messages to his wife, his son, his friends. "Don't let the music die with me," he wrote. "Play it, even when your hearts are broken." One day the pain reached its peak. His body froze, no movement, no deep breath, nothing but wide-open eyes staring at the ceiling. His wife didn't cry. She simply placed her hand on his chest and whispered, "Bob, you're still here. The music is still here." He smiled. A single tear rolled from his left eye. Then he slipped away. But death, for Bob Seger, was not the end. It was a long rest, a pause before the final refrain of his life song, not blasted from loudspeakers, not on the radio, but inside the hearts of those who once listened to him in the dark, who found themselves in a lyric, a guitar riff, a drumbeat that sounded like a breaking heart. After his passing, his wife found a small wooden music box on his desk. Inside was an unfinished song, just a few scattered notes, some half-written lyrics. On the cover, "Lullaby for When I'm Gone." She wept, not because he had left, but because he was still speaking, still singing, still alive, through music, through silence. No headlines blared, no televised funeral. Yet strangers across America held their own moments of remembrance. A truck driver pulled over on the highway, opened his door, and let "Roll Me Away" echo into the empty air. A retired soldier played the distance and sat quietly in his armchair, reminiscing youth. A young woman who never met Seger, only heard of him through her father, wrote online, "I've never felt so understood as when I hear him sing. Thank you for voicing the silence of people like me." Bob Seger didn't just die of illness. He died of the world's silence toward what truly matters: memory, truth, love. But he, through all his pain, taught us that sometimes silence is the loudest sound. When someone asked, "Were you ever afraid of dying?" Bob just shook his head. "No," he wrote. "I was afraid of forgetting to live." And he lived through music, through pain, through his very death. Yet life always finds ways to challenge the most beautiful souls. In his 70s, when many believed Bob had entered a peaceful final chapter, fate opened a dark door. Neuroendocrine cancer, rare, silent, merciless. He didn't make a public announcement. No emotional speeches, no fundraising campaigns, no bold declarations. Bob Seger faced it like he faced life, alone, brave, with nothing to prove. He refused televised treatment, declined interview invites. Instead, he returned to his suburban home, played old songs, left small handwritten notes for his son, and spent his final evenings holding his wife a little longer. It was the hush before a final note, unheard, but deeply felt. A friend recalled, "I visited Bob a few weeks before he passed. He was thinner, his hands shook, but his gentle gaze was still there. He told me, 'I don't want people to remember how I died. I want them to remember that I lived through music, through my heart.'" And indeed, no one can think of Bob Seger without hearing his music as part of their soul, part of their memory. On the day he passed, all of America seemed to fall silent. No grand procession, no celebrity tribute. The Seger family left only one simple message: Bob Seger, our storyteller, has found his rest. Play an old song, close your eyes, and let your heart remember that he was here. At a small gas station on the interstate, a man stood frozen after fueling, listening to like a rock play from a dusty speaker. At a southern bar, the owner let Stranger in Town play from morning to night, uninterrupted. In the corner of an elderly woman's bedroom, a photo of a young, smiling Bob Seger sat beside a radio, a reminder that some people never truly disappear. To many, Bob Seger was a musician. To others, a memory. But to those who had ever been lonely, ever wandered through the night, ever felt not strong enough, Bob was salvation. He was the one who spoke for them, sang for them, cried for them. And when night falls, somewhere in the rustling trees by the roadside, you can still hear Seger wordless, but full of love. A final ballad that never ends. A wandering soul, still singing through the heart of America, like a note that never fades.